This is session 3 of the Law Society 2016 Return to Work programme. Welcome to session 3 of our Return to Work programme. I'm Keith O'Malley with the Law Society Career Support Service. Hi. In the last session, we looked at setting objectives for return to work, and we then paused to consider realities that quite often affect people in a return to work situation, and also the full range of options that tend to be open and available. We asked people to reconsider the objectives that they had set against this full range of realities and options that exist, and to then finalise. Once participants have finalised their objectives, they're then able to draft an action plan. And drafting an action plan is a really important part of getting organised in terms of job seeking. We then went on and looked at CVs and the kind of CV that's appropriate or most appropriate for people in a return to work situation. In particular, we looked at functional format, which tends to be sometimes more appropriate than the traditional chronological CV for people in a return to work situation. What we're going to do now in session 3 is we're going to look at the whole business of finding out about opportunities and applying for them, with a particular emphasis on what works best for people in a return to work situation. So we're going to look at easy ways to get a job. We're going to progress then on and look at smart job seeking strategies. We're going to look at speculative approach and how best to do that. And we're going to then move on and look at social networking. So we're going to start with the whole business about getting a job and considering the easiest possible ways of getting a job. Have you any thoughts on this? Are you aware of a certain set of circumstances which leads to somebody falling on their feet and getting something with absolute ease? Well, let me put a particular situation that sometimes happens within business to you. Somebody, a boss, ideally, looks up from their PC and they say, "Oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in really, really bad trouble now. We've been trying to do too much with too few people, and now this damn project has come in, and there's no way that I can manage. I should have gone out and hired before now, but now I'm stuck in a situation. I don't have enough people to do the work, and I don't have enough time to go out and look for somebody." And a colleague, somebody else, says to her or to him, "I know somebody that could do that for you. I know a cousin of mine, Margaret Delaney. She's a solicitor. She's available to work. She could start here next Monday. She could look after that project for you and see it through." What does the person say? The boss? They say, "Well, what? How long is she qualified, and where did she do her business, her law degree?" No, what they'll tend to do is focus on two things. Are you saying that she could do this work? And number 2, are you saying that she can start in the kind of time frame that you're talking about? That's what they're interested in, nothing else. That kind of job, quite often you can fall into it without getting interview. That's the very easiest way to get a job. What's the second easiest way to get a job? Any ideas? Well, I would suggest in this case, it tends to be, again, where a boss looks up from a computer and says, "Wow, that's an interesting email I've just got from somebody with their CV attached. I am really badly stuck for conveyancing person, and this person says they're available and they can join right away. This person just might be the answer to our problems." That's the second easiest way to get a job. So what both of these ways are, of course, are proactive approaches. You don't wait around for an employer to advertise a job or to give it out to a recruitment company or something else like that. But you keep your ear to the ground, you have a sense of where opportunities are likely to come up, and most importantly, you have your people who know you, your family, friends, former colleagues on the lookout for opportunities for you. And if they hear about things, that they're in a position that they can recommend you. And also, for that second easiest job, you're in the business of you're out and approaching other employers directly. So they're the two easiest ways of getting a job. It's one of those strange things. People think that the easiest way to get a job is to look up on the Law Society website, it goes through legal vacancies, and there's a whole range of opportunities coming up there. Yes, there are, and it's even easier to learn about jobs through recruitment companies. Recruitment companies seem to have any amount of jobs. You go on to the websites like irishjobs.ie, and recruiters will have any amount of legal jobs, but it's much more difficult to get them. So what generally happens is there is it's easy and very easy sometimes to find out about jobs from recruiters, but it's quite difficult to actually get appointed into one of them. Likewise with advertisements, job advertisements, you can hear about, learn about any amount of job advertisements, but it's a different thing to actually get your application accepted, get interviewed, and be successful and be selected. However, with personal contact, where you utilize your personal contacts and you have them operating like ears and eyes for you within the legal job market generally, it's more difficult to hear about jobs. But if you hear about something, you have a far higher chance of actually getting it. And even more difficult to hear about opportunities are where somebody is thinking about about hiring, but it hasn't quite crystallized in their mind. However, if you approach them at that kind of opportune time, you can find yourself maybe being the only person being considered for a role. So let's look at the odds. If you hear about a job through a recruitment company, we say you have an 80%, a 1 in 80 chance of getting that job. Why? Well, an employer will tend to give the job out to 4 recruitment firms on average. Each of these firms will consider at least 20 people, and they'll put 3 or 4 people forward. The employer will interview 5 or 6 people, and 1 person will get the job. So 80 people have been considered, and 1 person gets it. What about an advertisement? On average, at the moment in the current market, about 15 people will apply for a job if it's advertised. So if you put your application in, you have a 1 in 15 chance of getting a job. What happens if your cousin hears about an opportunity coming up in their firm? They ask for your details and they put your CV in. Well, the likelihood is some other staff will also be recommending some people. But on average, we say it would be you and 3 other people will be considered. So within that kind of situation, things vary, but on average, you're likely to be about 1 in 4. Your chances of getting the job are markedly higher. What if you approach an employer, you maybe email them or you phone them up or you call into them, and they just happen to be looking for somebody or just about to start looking for somebody. And they take the approach, well, actually this person just might suit us fine. Then you're in a 1 out of 1 situation. You're in what we would term a non-competitive selection situation. So what we would suggest is that you take a more proactive approach to getting jobs. Yes, it's harder to hear about opportunities, but once if you strike an opportunity, you stand a very, very strong, big chance of getting it. So what we're now going to go on and look at is smart job seeking and the kind of strategies that you should use in order to job seek in a smart way. We would say you should, in as far as you can, you should seek out non-competitive opportunities. What we're talking about are where you are the only person may going to be considered, or you're one of a very small number, but you stay away, you eschew display or job advertisements and recruitment opportunities, recruitment firm opportunities. You talk to people you know and you involve them in the process. And when we say you involve them, you ask them to keep an eye out, you ask them for ideas that they've got, and you keep them updated with how things are going. You're flexible. So if somebody phones and says, I've got a probate job here, I know you haven't done a huge amount of probate, but you're more convincing, that you don't say no, not interested or whatever. If somebody sources an interesting opportunity for you, you at least go along and talk to the employer and see if it if you would be able to do it. And you keep people updated. If you get some kind of a job, maybe it might be a relatively short-term one for 3 or 4 weeks, whatever, you let your people know so that they're not going into their boss and saying, have I got the person for you, if you're not available for a period of time. We're going to go back now and look at distinguish a little bit further between the two principal ways of proactively looking for work, and that we've already outlined how the easiest way to get a job tends to be when somebody recommends you strongly to an employer. What we said is the second easiest way to get a job is if you contact an employer and you pique their interest just at a time when they're ready to hire. Well, if you look at these a little bit further, one of them, there's an awful lot more, you retain an awful lot of more control, and it's the second one here. If you contact employers, if you're not getting too much in the way of opportunities, you can quite simply start contacting more employers. You can up your efforts. Whereas if you have asked your network of contacts to watch out for opportunities, what you've got to do, quite often is, to an extent, is sit back and wait for them to do it. So what we would say is, whereas the best way or the easiest way to get a job is where somebody recommends you, and quite often those jobs you can get without even doing an interview. The best way of getting a job tends to be the other one, where you contact an employer and you pique their interest. If we look at it in terms of the best way as opposed to the easiest way, this would be number one. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the whole business of making a speculative approach to an employer and what works. And this works is really terribly appropriate for people in a return to work situation. The reason it's so important is if you approach an employer and they're interested in you, you don't necessarily have to go on the same kind of terms as everybody else, starting at 9 o'clock maybe in the morning, or working 37.5 hours a week. You might be you can well say, I will look after that project, I'll take care of that work, and I believe I can do it by and start at 10 o'clock every day. And the terms in which you agree, remuneration, and that can be set accordingly. So if you make a speculative approach, quite often you're dealing with an employer who hasn't really thought through and said, I want to hire somebody and I want to pay them this much. So there tends to be an awful lot more freedom to fashion the work, the job, and make it the way that suits you best. So what we would propose in terms of approaching employers on a speculative basis is that you propose what you want. So you figure out what you want in terms of work. How many days a week do you want to work? What time do you want to start? What time do you want to finish? And then what you need to do is mold that and you know, turn it into something that's attractive to the employer. So you're still dealing with what you want, but you need to be able to talk about it in terms that an employer is going to find attractive. So you say, you know, you're in a situation where you need somebody to do conveyancing, but you probably don't need somebody, you know, all the time, you know, 5 days a week or whatever. The advantage of somebody like me is I can come in and I can work on the following kind of terms, and you're talking about terms that suit you. So that's a hugely important part of the whole business of approaching employers speculatively. You figure out what you want, and then you go to employers and you put that as a very attractive proposition to them. The second important suggestion to make is that you, in all your job offer efforts, but particularly in terms of speculative approach, that you seek to become, in as far as you can, a solution provider rather than a job beggar. So you don't go to employers and say, hi Mr. Employer, I need a job, have you got any jobs? But you're going to them and saying, you seem to be doing really well, I expect you must be very busy in the following kind of work. If you need help, and you need help on you know, a certain kind of maybe casual basis or part-time basis, you know, I'm in a position to provide you with that kind of support. Okay, in as far as you can, if you can be innovative, if you can be enterprising in the way, in your approach to what you can do for an employer, it makes a huge difference. So a lot of employers are finding it difficult to you know, get an awful lot of additional excess business in. If you can go to a firm and say to them, I understand that you're not doing much in the way of family law. I'm interested in family law and in joining a firm and you know, establishing you know, a family law practice within a good dynamic firm. Would that be something of interest to you? So where you're going in as a rainmaker, or any other kind of way, any proposal that you've got that involves the employer, an opportunity for the employer to make more money or to save money somehow. Those kind of propositions tend to be very, very interesting to employers. Have lots of irons in the fire. Think about employers. When employers, if they go to the trouble of advertising, they seek a number of people, and you know, they make their choice from that. If you're going to go out and approach employers, why not go to enough employers that you move into a situation that you're not seeking one job offer, but maybe 3 job offers. In that kind of situation, what happens so often is you can say to an employer, well, I really like what you're about here, but you know, I've got a job offer for more money down the road. So, you know, I'd love to come and work for you, but you know, this is the choice that I've got. So that puts you into a much stronger situation in terms of negotiating salary, that kind of stuff. So seek, if you're going out to approach employers, approach a number of employers and try and put yourself into a situation where you've got a number of offers in front of you. So we're now going to look at smart ways to approach an employer. I would say generally, you know, a good way, particularly if you're operating, say, in Dublin, where you're not going to, you know lots of employers on a personal one-to-one basis, that email works very, very well. The ideal way to get to approach an employer is to email them, follow up with a phone call, seeking a meeting, and then go in and have a meeting with them. So, you know, ultimately nothing works better than the meeting, but to get the meeting you need to talk to them on the phone beforehand, and in order for them to take a call from you and to you know, be warmed up a little bit, you start with an email. So you send them an email, ideally telling them that you'll phone them in a day or two, and that you'll be seeking a meeting, and when you phone them, you hold out, and they may want to discuss the matter over the phone, but you say, really, I'm not going to do justice with it unless I get in to meet you. So you do that. But in terms of your approach, that first email approach, focus in as far as you can on what the employer is concerned about. So any idea you have, how the employer, might be interested in saving money or in, opening up a new area of business, anything else like that. Focus on that, and focus on that from the outset. There's a tendency among job seekers to focus on what they're interested in and their situation. I was recently made redundant. I'm looking for a new opportunity. If you have it in your firm, much better to say, I'd like to talk to you about an opportunity for you to develop, a particularly lucrative legal business that you're not doing at the moment within your firm. Personalize it as much as you can. Certainly always start the email addressed to the person, and if you can refer to something that they've done, maybe an article in the paper or anything else like that, it can help no end. Of course, the best start or way to personalize it is if you've got a recommendation. If you can say, John Smith suggests that I contact you do that. Keep things simple. You don't need to go into detail. Keep things very, very simple. And in particular, what you should be aiming to do all the time is to get a meeting, is to sit down with the person. So you don't want to give too much detail when you either email the person or when you follow up with a phone call. Seek a meeting is really key, because employers, if they meet you and they like you, they will there and then say, okay, well, let's talk, terms under which you could come and work for us. But they won't do that over the phone. Ideally, if you feel up to it, undertake to contact them. So in your email you say, I would be very keen to meet with you briefly and to explain this option in more detail, and I will give you a call tomorrow to see when would suit you for me to drop in. If you're you're not quite, you don't want to do that, you don't like the idea of having to make a relatively cold call in a day or two, you can say, look, if this is something of interest to you, if you let me know by email, we can organise to meet. All the time what you need to do is balance between quantity and quality. If you have if you can spend a lot of time structuring an approach to a particular firm, you can personalize an awful lot. On the other hand, you want to get it out to as many firms as possible. So there is this balance to be struck all the time between something that's very personal and is likely to be very well received by a particular person, and something that has a communication that has a more general appeal. So that's the whole business of going out and looking for jobs and making approaches to companies covered. And we're going to now go on and look at social networking. Social networking refers to making contact with people through social media. So, the big one for business tends to be LinkedIn, but it can be Facebook, Twitter. All of these facilities facilitate social networking. But what we're going to do is focus on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is by far the biggest platform for people in a job-seeking situation. We don't hear of huge numbers of solicitors getting jobs through opportunities, through LinkedIn, and we don't hear in particular about people in a return to work situation necessarily doing terribly well out of LinkedIn. And our advice would be, put as much effort as you can into talking to people and meeting people and having one-to-one, person-to-person relationships with people rather than spending too much time social networking and working on your profile within LinkedIn and developing a really good online reputation. But what we're going to do here is we're going to cover the basics. We're going to look at getting started on LinkedIn. We're going to talk you through the basic matters that you should address. We're going to look at creating a good headline and a summary. We're going to talk about utilizing keywords and how you can network using LinkedIn. So in terms of doing the basics on LinkedIn, it's important that you have a good photograph. It's important that the best kind of photograph is a head and shoulders shot with a white background. Use your whatever name you're most commonly known as, and drop middle names unless you particularly you use them. So Keith O'Malley as opposed to Keith Michael O'Malley, and list all previous jobs and give good information on your educational background and keep the information up to date. The headline and summary is very, very important, and it goes right to under your name. It's important to identify and your profession and your speciality within the headline, and use summary to prompt people's interest. Be concise in your summary and highlight any specialities you have within the summary section. In terms of keywords, these should reflect what you do and any specialities that you have. You should decide on 4 or 5 of the best words that best reflect you and the kind of work that you do and what you're best at and where you provide best value. And make sure that these 4, 5 or 6 keywords are in the 5 key areas. And the key areas on your LinkedIn profile are your headline, your summary, your specialities, your information about your current job, and information about your last job. So within those 5 areas, make sure that your 4, 5 or 6 keywords are mentioned. In terms of networking, there's a range of different options available to you in terms of connecting. It's important to connect with as many old colleagues that you have, family, friends, people you know from school, from college, all of that kind of stuff, and get involved in some groups and participate within them. Seek recommendations from people and give recommendations from people. Provide endorsements and you'll find that you get them back. Join discussions in groups, and if there's any time that you can offer somebody some help or some advice or guidance or anything else like that within a group, do that. That's great. At a more advanced level, the kind of things that are important in LinkedIn is to upgrade your profile and get the very, have a profile that really is firing on all cylinders. Do research to hear about jobs and to research people that you may be going to meet as part of your job seeking activities. Improve at networking and access job opportunities through LinkedIn. So in terms of improving your profile, the first thing that you should probably do is to personalize your URL. There's lots of instructions about how to do this if you Google it. It's very, very easy to do it. You should review and improve your profile. When you first write it, you'll do so well at it, but when you go back and look at it again, maybe a few weeks later, whatever, and you compare it to what some other people are doing, you very likely are going to be of the view that you can do something further with it. Post a CV, is a good idea, particularly if you have a CV that you're particularly happy with. It means that other people can access it as well. And provide an email address, and provide that email address in a place where people can access it with with ease. And consider using an ad section. There's a range of different options in this regard. In terms of the next thing that we propose is that you use LinkedIn increasingly as you get advanced and more comfortable with it. You use it for research, and you can do this in a range of different ways. There's a very good search facility on LinkedIn, and you can use that. You can check out people that maybe you're going to meet in an interview situation, and you can read up and see where they've worked in the past, and sometimes they might have work that they've done posted to their profile. So it's a very good way of finding out about people that you're going to meet. Consider a paid subscription if you're doing a lot of work on LinkedIn, because there are times like when you want to send emails to people, you can do this in a much more effective and quick way if you have a premium profile. It costs about €240 a year. So it's not cheap, particularly if you're not working. And it's not something that you should do unless you're using LinkedIn a lot. But there comes a time, if you're using LinkedIn a lot, that it makes sense to have a premium subscription. Change the settings and learn about changing settings. But if you want to check out somebody and you don't want them to know that you've been looking at their profile, there is an option to change the settings so that they won't know. The only thing is, everything in LinkedIn is based on, you don't get something without, if you take something like an option of privacy, you lose out. So there is this a trade-off all the time, that if you close down on what people can see about you, you're not you at the same time close down on what you can see about other people. It's also that there's a trade-off there all the time. Improve at networking. Things like personalized messages when you're making contact with people are a good idea. There is a standard message that most people send out when they're seeking to link up with somebody. But if you can send a personalized message, or maybe you respond to people when they seek to link up with you with a personalized message. Use contacts, connections that you have to link with other connections with people that you're interested in. Maybe somebody who's working in a firm or an organisation that you're particularly keen on working in. You can do that by linking up with somebody who's already there, and you do this through a mutual connection that you both have. Use the answers facility to find out. There's a huge amount of information within the answers facility. This facility where people have queried things and they've got responses. Publish posts yourself and respond to posts for others, and join more groups. Sometimes you'll join a group and it won't be particularly, maybe there mightn't be much in the way of activities, but other times you'll join a group and you'll be surprised that the quality of discussion and the quality of connections that you can make through it. LinkedIn is a very a good way of accessing job opportunities, and it is increasingly becoming so. Watch job advertisements. More and more employers are advertising on LinkedIn, and quite often those jobs are not going to appear anywhere else. So if you're not watching the job ads on LinkedIn, there are some advertised jobs that quite simply will slip by you, and you won't see them, you won't know about them. A good thing to do on a facility on LinkedIn is to follow employers. So if you really want to work for a particular employer, maybe the Law Reform Commission, you can you can connect to them, and any news from them and any or news about updates about opportunities coming up, anything like that, you will be informed about it. Okay, approach people you admire. It's an option for on LinkedIn, and it's one that a lot of people use. So if you're particularly interested in family law and you think Muriel Wall is a person that you would love to have a discussion with, you can do that kind of thing on LinkedIn, and it's one of the great strengths of LinkedIn. If you're available or becoming available, you can announce that to your connections. So, if you find yourself in a situation where you're going to be made redundant and the date is agreed or whatever, and you're going to, in 3 weeks' time, you're going to be, on the job market, it's a great idea to let your connections know on LinkedIn. So, within this session 3, we looked at easy ways to get a job. We looked at strategies to proactive job seeking strategies, what we would call smart job seeking strategies. We looked at speculative approach and the best way to fashion a speculative approach to an employer. And we finished up by talking through social networking. We've got some homework for you. What I would ask you to do is to look at Karen English's presentation. It's available on YouTube at the using the hyperlink that's on the screen at the moment. And also, we would ask you to look to return to the Pamela Weinberg presentation. This is a presentation that we've proposed that you look at before, and the reason I'm asking you to go back and look at this again is towards the end she has a lady from LinkedIn speak, and then she speaks herself about LinkedIn, and it's particularly good information about LinkedIn and what you can do by way of social networking on LinkedIn. I would ask you to complete and to send to me the new CV. If you've done a new CV, a new version of your CV, it would be great if you could send it to me, and myself or my colleague Teresa will give you feedback on it. And if you have, hopefully you have drafted an action plan at this stage, and again I would ask you to send a copy of that in to me, and I will give you feedback on that as well. That's the end of session 3. I look forward to talking to you again in session 4, which will be our last session within this program, the Return to Work 2016 program. So I'll say goodbye now, and I look forward to talking to you again in session 4.